Since childhood, you've heard about let there be light, but have you ever wondered what existed before that? Before light, time, angels, where was God? Where did he dwell when not even the heavens had been created? This is a question traditional religions avoid answering, perhaps because the answer touches on something profound, forbidden, and disturbing. Stay with me until the end, because what you discover now may surprise you. Most people imagine God sitting on a throne, surrounded by heavenly choirs and worshiping angels. But what if I told you that this scenario only emerged later? That there's a mystery that predates Genesis, a zero point of existence, where neither space nor time nor the heavens yet existed? Before the beginning, there was only the mystery of creation, absolute silence, a state of total invisibility. There was no heaven, no throne, no word, only God in a place that was no place, in an existence without form, without name, without beginning. Have you ever felt like there's something missing from the stories you've been told? Have you ever had the feeling that there are hidden riddles of the Bible that no one wants you to discover? Well, that's exactly what we're going to reveal here. They hid it for centuries, but today you'll have access to what was read by kings and banned from altars. What do the apocryphal books in ancient texts, such as the Zohar and Enoch, say about God's dwelling place before creation? And why was this knowledge silenced? There is a name for this primordial state. Some traditions call it Ein Sof, the infinite essence, the non-being, the shoreless ocean, a sacred place where everything was contained, and where God dwelt before all else. You are about to pierce the veil of the known, to delve into a spiritual truth that transforms, because it reveals what has been hidden since the beginning of time. But that's just the beginning, because the answer to where God lived before heaven is still hidden in the deepest layers of creation. Let's go there. And as you delve into this mystery with me, I want to extend a sincere invitation. If this topic resonates with you, if at any point you felt there was something beyond what you've been told, leave a comment below what has touched you most so far, your perspective, your doubts, even your personal experience. All of this is part of the journey. This space is not just a channel. It is a sanctuary of discovery, where each comment becomes another thread in this vast, invisible fabric of creation. And if this content is awakening something within you, a curiosity that won't go away, a thirst for answers no one has ever given you, click the like button. It may seem simple, but this gesture helps this video reach others who also feel the same restlessness. People who, like you, know there's something hidden and want to discover what's been banished from the public eye. And of course, if you wish to continue this journey with me, if you want to delve deep into the most secret layers off mysteries of creation, follow the revelations that were silenced, and be part of a community that seeks what lies beyond the veil, subscribe to the channel now, because this is just the beginning. There's still much to come, and some truths are only revealed to those who choose to continue. Now take a deep breath, because what comes next may forever change the way you understand the divine. Where did God dwell when there was no heaven, no throne, not even space? This question doesn't echo from pulpits. It doesn't appear in sermons. It isn't part of catechisms. But it lives silently in the hearts of those who look up and sense something beyond the spoken words. It's as if, from the very beginning, you've known there's a hidden truth, camouflaged among the verses, hidden behind the curtains of tradition, something no one has dared reveal, perhaps out of fear, or reverence, or power. Because when we ask, where was God before heaven, we're not just talking about a physical place. We're poking at the very foundations of reality. We're asking about the origin of being itself, about what existed before existence, and that is uncomfortable for those who live by ready-made answers. But here, in this space between the visible and the invisible, between the known and the untouchable, is where the mysteries of creation are born. And I don't want to give you just another shallow content. I want to invite you to dive where few dare descend. Because when we begin to question where God lived, we also begin to question everything we've been told about who he is and who we are in this immense cosmic theater. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Imagine a time before time, not the time measured by clocks or moving galaxies, but then in time, where the word still slept and the silence was absolute. It is in this setting that the question takes on a vivid form. If heaven was created, if the throne was established later, Then where did he who sustains all rest? Ancient mystics claimed that God did not dwell in one place. Butyrate place itself, the place before the place. Pure consciousness, not yet divided between light and darkness, form and void. Some forgotten texts speak of a dimensionless point, a state of being so absolute that it lacked even the idea of above or below. It was a shoreless ocean, a directionless infinity, and in this infinity dwelt the origin. In Kabbalah, this state is called Ein Sof, the limitless. It is not an entity with a face or voice, but an emanation of pure possibility. Before creation, God did not occupy a throne. He was mystery itself, a being who needed no dwelling, because everything that would ever exist already pulsed within him. This changes everything, doesn't it? Because the image of a fixed God, located in a defined heaven, dissolves before the immensity of God who overflows even existence. This transforms our mindset, shifts our spiritual perception, and makes us realize how small the limits of language are when we try to touch the eternal. But there is something even deeper here. Because if God wasn't in somewhere, perhaps he was all along, all potential places. And this raises a new question. Was creation not just an act, but a gradual manifestation of that which has always existed? This insight changes the way we look at Genesis. Let there be light would not then be God's first moment doing, but of God revealing itself as if, in that instant, what was hidden began to unfold, and what was once silence became a verb. The question where God lived then becomes another. What existed within God before everything existed outside of him? Perhaps that's why this truth has been silenced, because it isn't explained with doctrine, but with silence. And this silence has weight, depth, and impact. It frightens, but it also heals, because when you understand that the origin lies beyond the visible, you stop seeking God only in heaven and begin to seek him in the invisible that dwells within you. And now that we're touching on the edges of this mystery, I want to extend a subtle but important invitation. Comment below, that makes sense to me, if any part of this journey has ever touched you, because your words here aren't just words. They're keys. They help open paths for others who, like you, are also searching for what's always been there, but no one has ever shown. Now, breathe, because the veil hasn't completely torn yet. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That's how it all begins. A simple, straightforward verse, etched in the minds of millions of people around the world. But if you look closely, delve between the lines, and allow curiosity to guide your thoughts, you'll notice something strange. This isn't exactly the origin of everything. It's just the beginning of what has been revealed. Because if God created heavens and the earth in the beginning, then logically they did not exist before that. And if they did not exist, where was God? This question seems simple, until you realize the abyss it opens. Because if heaven, as a sacred space, was a work of creation, then God did not inhabit it before it was formed. This destroys the traditional idea of a God on high from the beginning, not by denial, but by revelation. Because perhaps God was no tinsomething. Perhaps he was all that existed before anything could be called something. This deconstruction doesn't negate faith. Quite the contrary. It strengthens spirituality by expanding its depth. It's like stepping out of framed painting and discovering that the entire painting is inside another gallery, and that gallery, in turn, inside something even larger. Genesis gives us the beginning of the narrative, but what came before the beginning is where the true mystery of creation lies. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. If everything began with the creation of the heavens and the earth, then we must accept that there was a before the beginning, a primordial state in which God existed without being in a place, because there was neither space nor time nor direction. There was no up nor down, no light nor darkness, just being. This is where traditional theology falls silent and hidden texts whisper. The book of Genesis was written for human eyes, but there are revelations that can only be grasped by those willing to look beyond the surface. And, curiously, some clues lie within Scripture itself, though they are rarely highlighted. In the Gospel of John itself, it is written, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." Notice the detail. Era and not was created. The Word as already was there, even before heaven. This suggests a pre-existence not only of God, but of a divine state prior creation, an invisible space where the word had not yet been spoken, but already was. And if the word existed, but had not yet been spoken, then there was a silence, a sacred silence, dense, charged with potential, a silence where everything that would come to be lived, a silence where God contained himself, not by limitation, but by choice, an infinite pause before the explosion of existence. This silence wasn't empty. It was full. It was the cradle of the first vibration, the interval between nothing and everything, the moment when divine decision, if we can call it that, began to take shape. And this leads us to an even bolder question. Did God need to make a decision to create? This idea directly touches on a vital point in our spiritual journey, the awareness of creation. Because if there was a decision, then there was also a desire, a divine impulse, an internal movement in the absolute, which led to the manifestation of something external. This is a behind-the-scenes story no one reveals. The origin of the origin, the moment when what was eternal decided to also become temporal. And this isn't just a mystical idea. It's a mindset key that changes the way we understand our own existence. Because if we were born of a divine choice, then we also carry within us the seed of the invisible, the echo of that initial silence. And perhaps, deep down, that's why so many people feel this restlessness, a longing that can't be explained, a feeling that something is lost, something religion hasn't told us, something logic can't grasp. It's the spiritual memory of the past, of what our minds don't remember, but our souls recognize. Now, imagine the impact of looking at Genesis not as the beginning of the world, but as the beginning of manifestation, the beginning of the visible, yes, but not the essence, because the essence already existed. It simply revealed itself. And this revelation continues to this day, in every decision we make, in every transformation we experience, in every moment we stop and feel that there is something greater calling us inward. All this, even before the first star, before light, before time. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. If any of this resonated within you, if this search isn't just curiosity, but an ancient calling that's now beginning to make sense, because the veil is still half open, and what lies behind it, perhaps, is even greater than we can imagine. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we begin to hear the echoes of forgotten, forbidden texts, buried under centuries of silence and censorship, a new reality begins to emerge, a reality that escapes the pages of the traditional Bible, not by opposition, but by expansion. What these banned texts suggest is not a denial of creation, but broadening of our understanding of what came before it. The book of Enoch, the Gnostic writings, the Kabbalistic tradition, all point, albeit in whispers, to the same point. God existed in himself. And what does this mean in practice? It means that before creation, before any heaven, sound, light, or matter, there was only the absolute, a state of being so profound, so silent, so complete, that it cannot even be described as existence in the terms we know. This state is called by some the unmanifest absolute. Others call it original plenitude, or even primordial source. But names don't quite capture it, because this non-place, this non-time, this non-state is the purest, most sacred, most anterior to anything we can imagine. It is the origin of origin, the cradle of being, the dwelling that needs no walls, no boundaries, because within it all is contained. God, at this point in the journey, is not a creator in action. He is not yet created. He's simply a being in absolute repose, in perfect self-sufficiency, with no need to express itself. And herein lies the greatest mystery. Why did this full, infinite, silent God decide to create? This isn't a theoretical question. It's a question that touches the essence of spirituality, because it forces us to face the fact that creation wasn't a mistake, nor a coincidence. It was a revelation, a profound, intentional decision, and perhaps full of love, or full of purpose, or full of something we don't yet have the language to translate. What the apocryphal texts insinuate is that this decision came from within the divine, as if silence had reached a point so dense, so charged with potential, that it exploded into light, as if eternity, for an instant, wished to see itself reflected in time, as if the infinite had, by choice, allowed itself to be finite, even if only for a moment, even if only to create mirrors in which to contemplate itself. This revelation completely transforms our mindset about Genesis, because it ceases to be merely the story of a created world and becomes a journey of a God who manifests himself, step by step, layer by layer. A God who descends from absolute silence to the vibration of the word, of matter, of form. And here comes another revealing point. If creation was a gradual manifestation, then perhaps heaven, earth, angels, and everything we know are merely distinct expressions of a single essence, fragments of a whole that was previously indivisible. This is why the occult texts, especially the Gnostic ones, speak so much of emanations. They describe creation not as a sudden act, but as a stream of revelations emanating from a one. Each level of reality would be a denser manifestation of the divine, and we would be at the furthest point, but also at the most vivid spark of that essence. This kind of vision is not meant to fuel religious debate. It is meant to provoke transformation. It serves to awaken the awareness that there is a spiritual framework behind everything, and that we were made in the image of something much greater than we can grasp with our eyes, something that pulses within us, even without a name. And perhaps that's why we feel this strange, almost inexplicable calling to seek what lies beyond, to investigate forgotten mysteries, to rediscover within our own souls that starting point where all was silent, but a silence full of promise, full of possibilities. When you begin to realize that God inhabited this unmanifest absolute, everything changes, because you understand that we are not separate from the source. We are connected to her, and the more we turn inward, the closer we come to the essence that existed before time. That's the true impact of this revelation. It's not just knowing more, it's remembering something you already carry. And this kind of memory doesn't come from the mind. It comes from the spirit. Write it down. That makes sense to me. If that feeling also touched you now, as a forgotten door was beginning to open, because the past still continues, and what is to come, perhaps, will reveal why the silence had to be broken. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about what existed before creation, we're not just dealing with a theological or symbolic question. We're touching the limits of language and the edge of human perception. And that's precisely where one of the most enigmatic and powerful concepts in spirituality comes in. Ein Sof. In the Kabbalistic tradition, Ein Sof is not a name for God, but an attempt to describe that which comes before the name, before form, before manifestation. Literally, it means the limitless. It is the absolute state of the divine, before any definition was possible, an infinite ocean of pure consciousness, colorless, soundless, directionless, a non-place that does not need to exist within space, because a tanned, very potential space of everything that could come into existence. The idea is so dense that even the great mystical masters warn, Ein Sof cannot be understood rationally. It cannot be described. It is felt like an internal impact, a sudden expansion of the mind, a silence, so alive it seems to scream something we cannot translate. And it is in this silence, in this luminous abyss, that God dwells in himself. Think about it calmly. Before creating the heavens, God was at rest within the totality of himself, without needing to act, without needing to be worshipped, without needing to manifest anything at all. He was, and this was, carries no time. It is not past. It is an eternity outside the timeline, a state of being that is beyond existence and non-existence. Kabbalah teaches that this Ein Sof is so complete, so absolute, that there was no reason for creation until the mystery itself decided to reveal itself. And this revelation was not instantaneous. It came in layers, as if the infinite were folding on itself, condensing its light into vibrations, forms, and realities. Each fold a dimension, each manifestation a clue, until finally space-time and everything we know as reality emerge. This journey from non-manifestation creation is described behind the scenes in Zohar as a process of contraction, a movement called Tzimtzum, where God, to create the universe, needed to collect his own infinite presence, opening a space within himself so that the world could exist. And this idea alone completely transforms our worldview, because if everything was created with and of God, then nothing is really separate from him. This revelation changes the way we perceive life spirituality, and even our most intimate decisions. We are not just in a universe created by God. We are living within a manifestation of the divine itself, and this has a direct impact on our spiritual identity. Because if we come from this ocean of pure consciousness, if we were shaped within this invisible vastness, then our essence is as ancient as the silence that preceded the word. This perspective also transforms the idea of spiritual distance. God is not up there. He is not isolated on some cosmic throne observing the world from outside. He is here, in every cell, in every breath, in every spark of that which still pulses with the vibration of the first movement, because everything, absolutely everything, still carries within itself a fragment of what was before it was. Ein Sof, then, is not just a distant and unattainable concept. It is a call inward, a reminder that the true sanctuary is hidden in the depths of being, that the divine presence need not be sought in mountains or temples, but accessed in the inner silence, where no words reach, but all revelation begins. And perhaps, deep down, this is what drives us to seek so much, because we long for what we've never seen, a desire to return to a place that was never a place, but a consciousness, alive, present, pulsating, the mystery from which we came, and to which, in the end, everything returns. This understanding does not erase faith, nullify Scripture, or break with tradition. It expands it. It shows us that before history began, before Genesis was written, before even the idea of a beginning existed, there was a God inhabiting the mystery of himself. And this mystery continues to call us, not to understand, but total remember. Come in here. That makes sense to me. If somehow this hidden truth also resonated within you, because the journey continues, and the next step may reveal why this mystery decided one day to become light. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when the silent books begin to whisper, when the forbidden texts open their pages like hidden portals in time, something deep within the soul recognizes and shivers. There's a hidden pattern among the forgotten records, an invisible thread that runs through Enoch, the Zohar, the Nag Hammadi Gospels, and so many other marginalized sources, not because they were false, but because they revealed too much. All these writings, with their veiled and symbolic language, point in the same direction. A time before time, a place before any place, a light that precedes even let there be light. And the word that appears most, even though disguised in metaphors, is silence. In Enoch, for example, we find mention of the high heaven that had not yet been opened and the light that did not shine because there were no eyes to see it. It's a kind of description you don't try to explain logically. It triggers spiritual memory. It speaks of a state where the divine dwelled formless, soundless, but with a presence that permeated everything. This is what the text calls, he who observes all from the silence that no one can fathom. The Zohar, in turn, speaks of an even more radical concept, the place that is no place, an expression that challenges the very idea of space. It is said that before any Sapphira, the divine emanations, manifested, there was only concealment within concealment, a state of existence so dense, so absolute, that it cannot even be considered existence in the ordinary sense. It was pure potentiality, as if the entire universe were contained in a single invisible point, awaiting the moment of decision. The Nag Hammadi manuscripts, especially the Gospel of Truth and the Tripartite, reveal an even more symbolic language. They speak of a plenitude that generated all things not out of necessity, but by overflow, like a spring that, so full of itself, simply begins to overflow. In these texts, we find a recurring expression, the light hidden in the stillness, a light that already existed, but remained silent, as if the word itself were dormant within the divine. This pattern, which appears in so many sources that have been labeled apocryphal or heretical, begins to form a silent and powerful narrative. They all speak of a for heaven, a state of being that is independent of location, form, or creation, a mystery that precedes even the concept of God as creator. And this is where ordinary language begins to fail, because when we try to translate this state into words, we reduce what cannot be reduced. That's why these texts use symbols. The throne that has not been set, the fire that does not burn, the voice that does not speak. These images are not literal. They are doors. And when you look through them, you begin to realize that this divine dwelling before creation was not an external place, but a state of wholeness, where everything already was, but nothing had yet separated. This changes everything, because if the origin of everything is in the state of plenitude and silence, then what we call reality is merely the continuation of an emanation, a vibration that descended layer by layer until it became matter, form, life, and we are part of this vibration, conscious fragments that still carry the memory of the source. And perhaps that's why these texts were silenced, because they not only reveal what happened before the beginning, they remind us that we too came from there, that there is something within us that still resonates with this original silence, and that when we listen deeply, when we quiet the external noise, we can feel a bit of that light, which is not light as we know it, but pure consciousness. This is the transformation this kind of knowledge brings. It's not rational knowledge. It's a shift in the mind, a new way of seeing reality, an opening to understand that the sacred doesn't begin with creation. It begins with a decision to create, and that this decision was born within a silence charged with intention. So, if you ever felt like the world is just a superficial layer of something much deeper, if you've ever felt like there's an origin that's never been spoken aloud, perhaps what you're hearing now isn't new. Perhaps it's just an echo, an ancient call, the memory of something that's always been with you, even before you were. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. If that echo reverberated within you, because there is still more to be revealed, and the veil is becoming ever thinner. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject, because there is a moment in history, or rather, before history, when everything was still silent, a silence that was not absence, but plenitude, a silence charged with possibilities, like a held breath about to become a word. And it is precisely the silence of God before "let there be light" that is perhaps the most enigmatic of all mysteries, because it not only precedes creation, it reveals something about the Creator himself. Silence has always been a sacred symbol. In many traditions, it is seen as a true language of the divine. Words can confuse, language can divide, but silence, this original silence, contains everything without saying anything. And it is in this state, according to mystical texts and forgotten interpretations, that God dwelled wrapped within himself, in a stillness that needed neither time nor witnesses. But was this silence static or dynamic? Was it waiting or contemplation? Some say that God expected nothing, because in him there is no need. But there are also those who suggest that, within this silence, there was an intention not yet pronounced, a will that is not desire as we know it, but a decision in repose, waiting for the moment to manifest itself. What if this silence was not just before creation, but creation in its purest form? It's possible that heaven was created as a reflection, not of a place, but of a state, a symbolic mirror of what God already was before space. Pure consciousness, formless, without boundaries. Just as an artist projects on a canvas not only what he sees, but what he feels. Perhaps heaven was God's first gesture, revealing to the outside what he already was on the inside. And this transforms everything we think about origin, purpose, and identity. Because if heaven is not just a created place, but a symbolic manifestation of the divine's inner dwelling, then we are not talking about spiritual geography. We are talking about an archetypal reality, something that continues to repeat itself, expanding within and without us. Heaven, in this sense, would not be a static dwelling, but a portal to understanding the Creator's mindset, a reflection of his essence translated into light, order, and vibration. This is a kind of revelation that destabilizes everything superficial, because suddenly spiritual maps shift. The throne isn't just above, it's everywhere consciousness recognizes as sacred. Paradise isn't just a destination, it's a lost memory, encoded in our essence, waiting to be awakened. And that's why God's silence is so disturbing, because it breaks formulas. He doesn't give ready-made answers. He demands listening. He confronts haste with presence. And he invites us to realize that perhaps the most important thing wasn't the moment God said, "Let there be light," but what hadn't say before that, what remained hidden, what he chose not to reveal. what remained only in feeling, in being. This silence is not empty. It is dense, full of unspoken meanings, full of messages that can only be accessed when the soul learns to listen without hearing, when the mind falls silent, when the ego stops asking and starts perceiving. Because true spiritual revelation doesn't shout. It whispers, and often not even that. It just is. And when you begin to contemplate the silence with reverence, something changes. The journey ceases to be a search for answers and becomes an approach to the sacred. You stop chasing the light and begin to realize that perhaps it is already within, just waiting for the veil to fall. A veil made of distractions, of noise, of thoughts that try to fill what only silence can contain. This is the true backstage of creation, what no one says. What isn't in the literal meaning of the text, but between the lines, in the gaps, in the white spaces. Because the divine, before being a verb, was intention, and before intention, it was pure presence. Comment here. That makes sense to me, if this realization also moved you, as if a switch had turned inside, because the journey continues, and something even deeper begins to emerge from the silence. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because the more we walk through this territory where mystery is the only certainty, the more we realize that perhaps we're asking the wrong question. Maybe where God dwelt before heaven isn't about location, but about conscience, about a primordial state of being that still remains hidden today, not because it's been locked away, but because few have learned to look at it with the right eyes. Most seek God above, in temples, in sacred words spoken with reverence. But what if God's true dwelling place isn't out there? What if heaven, the throne, the myriads of angels, are merely symbolic translations, metaphors of a deeper reality that doesn't fit into form? What if this pre-creation state is still available, not on maps, but within transformed human perception? Because everything we've seen so far points to this disturbing possibility. God, before creation, was absolute fullness, conscious silence, unrevealed intention, and if everything created is, in some way, a reflection of him, then we still carry within us the shadow, the echo, the vibration of that before. A kind of inexplicable longing, not for a physical place, but for a state of connection that precedes time, form, and separation. And perhaps this is precisely what so many ancient traditions sought to preserve through rituals, symbols, and sacred languages, access to this state, not as a religion, but as our turn to the origin, a journey of reconnection with the essence that still pulses behind everything, a path that involves less belief and more listening. Because when you allow yourself to be silent inside, truly, something begins to emerge. It's not a voice. It's not an image. It's a gentle yet undeniable awareness that there's a presence that's always been there, a light before the light, a consciousness that doesn't need to prove anything to be real, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances. Authentic spirituality, at this point in the journey, ceases to be a set of rules and becomes an immersion, a surrender, a state of trust that doesn't seek control, but living presence, because there at the center of that silent state, perhaps still dwells what we call God, not as a distant figure, but as a very core being. And that's why the mystery remains. Because the more we try to name it, the more it escapes. The more we surround it with words, the more it falls silent. But if we just feel it, if we just acknowledge it in silence, it passes through us. And that's enough. After all, perhaps God's true abode was never a place, but a state of consciousness so pure, so complete, that only those who access it with their hearts can recognize it. And this state still remains hidden from the common man, not because it is impossible to attain, but because few decide to look within with courage. Comment here. God dwells in the invisible. If this truth resonated with you, because the journey isn't over, and there's much more behind the curtain of creation than we imagine. If you've made it this far, it's because this mystery spoke to something deep within you. And that says a lot about the kind of journey we're on together. This space isn't just a channel. It's a refuge for those who feel there's something beyond what's always been said. And if this content brought you value, made you think in a new way, or simply touched a deep chord within you, subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll continue receiving content like this, which doesn't provide easy answers, but opens doors to revelations that were forgotten. Leave your like too, not as an automatic gesture, but as a sign that this conversation truly reached you. And write in the comments, I'm with you until the end, just so I know who went all the way to the last words and continue with that vibe until the end. There's a video right here that complements all of this in a surprising way. Click and stay with me there, because the next key is already waiting for you.